In the beginning, the world was a vast expanse of emptiness, cloaked in darkness and silence. The only presence was the Spirit of God, hovering over the waters, waiting patiently. This primordial setting was devoid of life, yet pregnant with potential. As the days unfolded, a plan began to take shape, one that would breathe life into the void, creating a tapestry of existence. Among the central characters were God, the Creator, whose voice could bring forth light from darkness, and the earth itself, yearning to be molded into something beautiful. The emotional state of this divine narrative was a blend of anticipation and wonder. God's heart brimmed with creativity, eager to transform chaos into order, while the earth awaited its destiny with silent hope. As stated in Genesis 1:2, now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. This moment held significant stakes. The fate of all creation teetered on the brink of a magnificent beginning. The challenge that lay ahead was immense, to form a world that would not only sustain life, but also reflect the divine image. What would this creation look like? How would it unfold? These questions lingered in the air, setting the stage for an extraordinary journey into existence itself. As the days of creation unfolded, the earth began to take on shape and form, responding to the gentle whispers of God. The sky stretched overhead, painted in deep blues and soft whites, while the land emerged, clothed in lush greens and vibrant hues. The animals began to roam, and the trees swayed in the breeze, each element harmonizing in a delicate balance. Yet amid this beauty, the Spirit of God observed closely, aware of the fragility of the emerging world. In these early moments, the characters of this unfolding story began to find their place. The sun and moon danced across the sky, each taking their turn to light the world while the waters teemed with life. The first inhabitants, Adam and Eve, were crafted from the very dust of the earth, instilled with the breath of life. They awoke to a paradise, a garden filled with every tree and flower, each more beautiful than the last. "Look at this place," Adam exclaimed one morning, gesturing towards the vibrant blossoms. "Can you believe it, Eve? We have everything we need right here." Eve smiled, her eyes sparkling with wonder. "It's perfect. But what do you think lies beyond the garden?" Their conversations were filled with curiosity and excitement, but beneath their joy lingered an unspoken tension. The command God had given them echoed in their minds. "You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat from it you will certainly die." Genesis 2:16-17. As they explored their surroundings, seeds of doubt began to sprout. Eve often pondered the implications of the command. "What does it mean to know good and evil?" she mused one evening as they watched the sun dip below the horizon. "Isn't it natural to want to understand everything?" Adam frowned, sensing her unrest. "But we have so much already. Why risk it?" His voice was filled with concern, reflecting the growing unease in his heart. Despite their idyllic setting, the challenges began to surface. As days passed, they faced simple yet profound dilemmas. How to cultivate the land, how to communicate their needs to the creatures around them. These challenges were manageable at first, but they hinted at a deeper struggle within their hearts, a yearning for knowledge and autonomy that threatened to disrupt their harmony. Then, one fateful day, a serpent slithered into the garden, its presence a harbinger of turmoil. "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" it hissed, its voice smooth and enticing. Eve's heart raced. The serpent's question echoed her own doubts. "We may eat the fruit of any tree, but not that one," she replied, trying to hold on to the truth. Yet uncertainty began to creep in, setting the stage for a conflict that would change everything. As tensions mounted, the once serene garden felt charged with impending strife, the atmosphere thick with the weight of choices yet to come. As the days turned into weeks, the once harmonious atmosphere of the garden began to shift. The playful laughter of Adam and Eve was now tinged with uncertainty, and the vibrant colors of their paradise felt somehow muted. They stood at a crossroads, the weight of their choices pressing heavily on their hearts. The The serpent, with its sly demeanor, had planted seeds of doubt that took root in Eve's mind. "You will not certainly die," it continued to entice her. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Genesis 3:4-5. These words danced around her thoughts, seducing her with the promise of wisdom and understanding. Eve felt a deep internal conflict stirring within her. She longed for the knowledge that the serpent promised, but feared the consequences of disobedience. "What if he's right?" she thought, glancing at Adam, who seemed increasingly troubled by her growing curiosity. His brow furrowed as he watched her wrestle with the temptation. "Eve, we have everything we need. Why would we risk it all for something unknown?" he pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. But Eve was torn. The garden, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its boundaries constraining her curiosity. She wanted to explore beyond the limits imposed upon them, to understand the world in its entirety. The tension between them grew, an invisible barrier rising as Adam's feelings of protectiveness clashed with Eve's desire for freedom. "Perhaps we should just taste it," she thought, her heart racing with both fear and excitement. What harm could it do? The thought haunted her, and she could feel the serpent's influence wrapping around her heart like a vine. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the garden, the atmosphere thickened with uncertainty. The once gentle rustle of leaves now seemed to whisper warnings, and the vibrant flowers appeared to droop under the weight of expectation. Adam sensed the impending storm, a clash not just between them, but between their choices and the divine command that lingered over their heads like a cloud. The garden, once a place of peace, was now a battleground for their hearts and minds. Decisions loomed ahead, promising new dilemmas that would echo through time. Would they yield to temptation, or would they stand firm against the rising tide of doubt? The future of their paradise hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a choice that could shatter everything they held dear. The days continued to pass, each one thickening the air with an unspoken tension that weighed heavily on Adam and Eve. As Eve wrestled with her desires, Adam found himself increasingly frustrated, caught in a whirlwind of emotions that left him feeling helpless. "I can't lose her," he thought, his heart racing as he watched her gaze longingly at the forbidden fruit. The serpent's words echoed in his mind, twisting the very fabric of their reality. Eve's curiosity had ignited a spark within her, a longing to grasp the wisdom that lay just beyond reach. What if by not taking this step, we are missing out on something beautiful, she pondered. The thought tormented her, pulling her in two opposing directions. She felt a stirring within her, a sense of empowerment and liberation that clashed with the fear of disobeying God. "For God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened." The serpent's promise lingered, tempting her to envision a life unshackled from divine restrictions. Adam, however, was rooted in the loyalty he felt toward their Creator. He desperately tried to remind Eve of their blessings, recalling the peace they had once shared. "Eve, don't you remember how we felt in the early days? We were free, happy in our ignorance," he urged, but his words seemed to fall flat against her growing resolve. "Maybe it's not ignorance," she countered, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Maybe it's just a different kind of knowledge we're meant to explore." Their conversations turned into arguments, each word a dagger that sliced deeper into their bond. "You're putting us at risk," Adam shouted one evening, frustration bubbling over. Eve's eyes, usually filled with warmth, flickered with defiance. "You don't understand, I need to know." The words hung in the air, thick with the weight of their implications. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a twilight glow over the garden, the shadows seemed to whisper the consequences of their choices. "You will surely die." Adam remembered the warning from God, Genesis 2:17, the fear of loss gnawing at his insides. Yet Eve's desire for understanding clouded her judgment, propelling her toward an inevitable confrontation with fate. The tension mounted with each passing hour, the garden now a silent witness to their struggle. The choices they faced were no longer simple. They were entangled in a web of emotions and desires that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their existence. Decisions made in haste could lead to irrevocable consequences, and as the climax drew nearer, the stakes had never been higher. The weight of their actions began to loom over them, a storm gathering strength, ready to unleash the tempest of their fate. As the moon rose high, casting silvery light over the garden, Eve stood before the tree, her heart racing. The serpent, coiled around the branches, its eyes glinting with temptation. Adam felt a chill run through him as he stepped forward, desperation etched on his face. "Eve, please," he pleaded, his voice cracking under the weight of their shared conflict. "Don't do this. We can't go against what God has commanded us." Eve turned to him, her expression a mix of fear and resolve. "But what if this is our chance to truly live, to understand good and evil?" She reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the forbidden fruit. It felt warm, pulsing with an energy that beckoned her closer. "You said we were happy in ignorance, but what if there's more? What if we're meant to know?" Adam felt the ground shift beneath him as she grasped the fruit. "Eve," he shouted, his voice echoing in the stillness. The memory of God's warning surged through him. "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Genesis 2:17. The weight of those words pressed heavily on his conscience, but Eve's determination was unyielding. In a moment that felt like eternity, Eve raised the fruit to her lips and took a bite. The world around them seemed to hold its breath as juice dripped down her chin, and for a heartbeat, she appeared radiant, enlightened. But as she handed it to Adam, he hesitated, torn between love and fear. "Eve, no," he cried, but the urgency in his voice was drowned by the pull of the moment. With trembling hands he accepted the fruit, and as he bit down, a rush of knowledge flooded his senses, both exhilarating and terrifying. Instantly, shadows deepened in the garden, and an unsettling chill filled the air. Their eyes widened, in horror as the realization dawned upon them. "What have we done?" Adam breathed, the gravity of their choice settling like a shroud around them. The harmony they once knew shattered, replaced by a gnawing sense of vulnerability. They looked at each other, and in that moment, the bond that had once been unbreakable now felt precarious, teetering on the brink of despair. The repercussions of their actions began to unfurl like dark clouds on the horizon, signaling the end of innocence and the dawn of a new, uncertain reality. As the garden whispered of their fate, Adam and Eve stood at the precipice of a change that would alter the course of their lives forever. As the weight of their choice settled around them, Adam and Eve felt the air grow thick with sorrow. The once vibrant colors of the garden dulled, the flowers drooping as if mourning alongside them. Adam's heart raced with regret, his mind a tumultuous storm of thoughts. "We have lost everything," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Eve, her eyes wide with terror, felt the first pangs of shame. The knowledge they sought had brought a heavy burden they were ill-prepared to carry. The serpent slithered away, its laughter echoing in their minds, a haunting reminder of the deceit that had led them astray. As they looked at each other, the innocence they once shared felt like a distant memory. They were no longer just companions, they were now aware of their nakedness, both physically and spiritually. Adam quickly fashioned makeshift garments from the leaves, an attempt to cover their vulnerability, but it felt like a feeble barrier against the reality they had unwittingly embraced. In the stillness, the voice of God called to them, a gentle yet firm reminder of their disobedience. "Where art thou?" he inquired, and Adam, filled with dread, stepped forward. "We were afraid," he confessed, "because we were naked." The divine response was laden with sorrow. "Who told you that you were naked? Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I commanded thee that thou shouldest not eat?" Genesis 3:9-11. With heavy hearts, they faced the consequences of their actions. The ground was cursed, and their lives would be filled with toil and pain. Yet in the midst of this punishment, there was a glimmer of hope. God spoke of a future where redemption would come, a promise of restoration, Genesis 3:15. As Adam and Eve were cast from the garden, they carried with them a profound lesson. Knowledge comes with responsibility. They learned that true wisdom lies not just in knowing good and evil, but in choosing to follow the path of righteousness. Their journey into the world beyond the garden would be fraught with trials, but they would also discover the depth of love, sacrifice, and the hope of redemption. Ultimately, their actions had forever altered the fabric of their existence, but through their pain, they would come to understand the beauty of grace and the unwavering promise of a God who sought to reclaim his creation. In the end, the garden was not just a lost paradise. It was the beginning of a deeper relationship, one built on trust, understanding, and the recognition of their need for divine guidance.